afternoon, folks. And we're back on again. There's lots of notes and guidance notes here, which is fantastic. My name is Edmund O'Connor, and I am the Commercial Business Manager at the ADAPT Centre. The good news is that we will probably, unfortunately, have to shorten this a little bit. The bad news is I'm your last stop before coffee break, and every minute is a minute into your coffee break. So that's not a great position to be in. But just to pick up on one or 2 points. What's this?
There's another one under there. Yeah.
All right. So I've gone old school and new school just to be on the safe side, taking no chances. So yeah, it's good to pick up on the last point. So this session is going to really revolve around collaboration and picking up on the precision ALS. What does genuine collaboration looks like? What do the depth of research married with industry research look like in terms of, from their perspective? Because at the end of the day, from an industry perspective, from uncertain times particularly over the last 24 months, when you have employees in particular sort of concerned about future skilling and upskilling, you're looking at sort of citizen engagement. How do you evolve collaboration projects that do not leave anybody behind? So we're certainly living in interesting times. Let's see, does this work? Yes. All good. We've seen a lot of newsworthy headlines over the last sort of 12 months, which are worth mentioning. One is AI is expected to add 250 billion to the Irish economy by 2035. That's from a report produced by Trinity College Dublin with Microsoft, with one of my academic colleagues, Professor Ashish Shah from Trinity Business School. That was released in March, which looked at AI adoption in Ireland soaring to about 90%. I think Ashish might be in the room, so you can always, there he is the back of the room, so you can all speak to him in the 5-10 minute coffee break that we have after this session. Earlier, just out recently, is the McKinsey report that looks at broad international AI adoption. It soared from about 55 to 78% from 2023 to 2024, as it continuing to accelerate through to 2025. And then recent reports, of course, in terms of a headline that sort of caught most people's attention, is certainly in terms of the markets and nervousness of investors, with the latest MIT report that came out during the summer, is that only 5% of integrated AI pilots have real impact. So you're talking about 95% of those pilot projects that are having no measurable profit and loss impact. So there's a gap. Is there a gap in our understanding or in our collaboration? What we want to showcase today is collaboration. There's a challenge and opportunity in terms of how do you create effective collaboration? How do you look at collaboration models that can sort of bridge that gap? Certainly from an ADAPT perspective over the last sort of 24 months, we've seen a shift in emphasis in terms of the questions that are being asked from us, from can we co-create, solve a specific problem in a finite timeline, to how do you embed academic research over the course of a joint AI lab for longer term engagement to create a much more interdisciplinary team within the organization. And part of, by way of one example, is the Dublin City Council Gen AI Lab, which is a good demonstration of interdisciplinary academic research being embedded within Dublin City Council to look at shared services across the City of Dublin and how to enhance and improve the services for the citizens. The essence of the Gen AI Lab really revolves around this sandbox, this safe environment where not only employees, but the organization can sort of experiment with the latest technologies, with Gen AI in particular, and how they can then move them from research into enterprise-grade production. There's 3 pillars in terms of the lab that it focuses on. You can almost look at this from a bottoms-up, top-down sort of perspective. From a bottoms-up, it is about AI literacy in terms of how do you keep employees engaged, how do you build their confidence around the technologies and around AI, and how do you build that literacy through the organization. From a top-down perspective, equally important, and we talked about regulations earlier this year, we're talking about how do you create a responsible AI framework? How do you implement that across the organization? And at its center then, how do you operationalize that, which is the third pillar, in terms of how do you bring employee sort of ideas and topics into proof of concept, and how do you move them into production? So one of the impacts from this over the last 12 months, and I'm not going to go too much into this because Nicola Graham will, talk to more detail about that when we sort of have our panel session. But one of the things we're seeing is that proof of concepts that are designed around employees' ideas and built from the ground up have a much greater impact in terms of being able to sort of integrate at a later stage into production and the impact within an organisation. So over the course of the last 12 months, we've held, I think, about sort of 20, and one of my colleagues, Robert Ross, has been involved in this as well, about 20 in-house workshops in terms of AI literacy, which is sort of, I think, included up to about 400 people, not only in Dublin City Council, but right through to other councils as well in Fingal County Council. So it is build from the ground up and make it as inclusive as possible with the right frameworks in place. And finally, just as a lasting thought, in terms of building genuine capacity, it is really drawing on the strengths of academia, we would suggest, in terms of thought leadership, capacity, and really integrating that into a joint long-term lab within these organisations so that collectively you can draw on the sort of skill sets of business, law, ethics, to meet some of the challenges in the technologies that, that have been evolving over the last sort of 12 to 24 months. So with that, I think it's time for our panel session. Hopefully that sets high level in terms of what we think in terms of what a joint AI lab looks like. So we have two journeys at different ends of the spectrum that were from our panels that I'm just going to call to the top table. And for this, I do need my notes. So first off, we have, bear with me. So first off, we have Eamonn Kennedy, Chief Investment Officer from Newscorp, who's really very much around envisaging, discovery, prototyping of commercial sort of engaged sort of projects for Newscorp group of companies. Previously, Chief Product Officer for Storyful, and Storyful is very familiar to a lot of people in the Irish scene. Eamonn, do you want to join us at the top table? And we have Nicola Graham from Dublin City Council. Nicola is an advocate for public sector innovation and a leader in smart city development for Dublin City Council. And she plays a critical role as Smart City Programme Manager, advancing innovation and strategic partnerships for improving services in the City of Dublin, and now leads the Gen AI Lab. Thanks, folks. A quick pivot from podium to chair. Listen, lovely to have you here today, and we are sort of moving towards maybe about 10 to 3 in terms of maybe 15 to 20 minutes in terms of Q&A. But before we sort of move into this, what Dublin City Council Gen AI Lab is doing, and then in terms of your roadmap, in terms of your initial engagement within Trinity College Dublin, it's good to maybe take a sort of background and look to, what you're doing, your role within Dublin City Council, in terms of your role within innovation and some of the challenges around technologies and what you're doing internally. And I know there is, prior to the Gen AI Lab, there is a long partnership with academia, with Dublin City Council.
Yeah, I suppose I'm Nicola Graham. I'm our Smart City Programme Manager. I've worked with the Smart City team for the last 10 years. Again, I suppose all about collaboration and innovation. The Smart City programme started through small business innovation research with Enterprise Ireland, and a lot of the challenges came through there. So we took a very challenge-based approach. Very challenge-based approach to city challenges, and very much recognise that the city doesn't always have the skills or the resources that it needs to do it on its own. So the value in these type of partnerships with industry or with academia are really, really valuable. I lead our Smart City programme, and we look at new and emerging technology and how that new and emerging technology can be used to help improve city services, and ultimately, obviously, improve the experience for our citizens, people that come to visit the city, and visitors. So a lot of the work that we do is around drones, the Gen AI Lab, which I now lead. We've done projects focused on
digital twins. Yeah, absolutely.
Digital twins. Sorry. Yeah. I arrived from Amsterdam at 7:30 this morning, so apologies. digital twins. And I suppose for me, digital twins brings all of the work that we've been doing for the last 10 years together. And then when you add the AI layer on top, you can really do some amazing things. But I think, as we heard earlier on, the data is really, really important. So whatever you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. So we're a very traditional paper-based organisation. We have lots and lots of paper. So digitization is probably the first step. But we've done a number of workshops with, I think, over 15 different departments to try and understand what people's needs are, to look at how we can use AI to make their day-to-day job better, and ultimately maybe give them back time so that they have more time to spend actually with citizens, or to understand how services can be improved, not just for now, but into the future.
Okay, so and you're operating in a very unique sort of space in terms of public services in Dublin City Council, and then flipping to you, Eamonn, which is a very different world in terms of Newscorp, and very much a global organisation. So just give us maybe a bit of your background in terms of what you do, and perhaps your new role, and which is a new role within Newscorp, by the way, which is and the journey then in terms of your role around innovation and some of the technologies and the impact on your sort of space.
Sure, yeah. I suppose my role is relatively it is relatively new. Is that better? Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Oh, okay, fantastic. So, yeah, my role is very new. I mean, Newscorp is a global organisation, right? It's a federated group of highly impactful, exciting companies where the sun never sets, right? So in terms of this new environment we're in, where things are changing not just every week, but almost every day in terms of technology and its advancement and AI, we're looking for ways that we can, I suppose, create a connective tissue more between those companies and get those kind of economies of scale in terms of innovation, because it's continually changing. I think there's huge challenges, but more importantly, there's huge opportunities. I think the best way to look at it is that we need to be experimenting, we need to be trying new things, but within a kind of a safe and need to have that governance structure there as well, which is highly important, because we're dealing with highly sensitive facts, we're dealing with society, and in a lot of ways to go back to my background, is with a company called Storyful, that we're very much focused on verifying information that you would see online, specifically on social media. So when you look at what's happening now recently with the likes of Sora 2, it's becoming more and more important that there are source of facts and verifiable truths that people can have access to, that society can have access to. And I think that's going to be one of our biggest challenges over the next while, plus all the rest, right?
There's a lot happening. And in terms of just your first steps, because in terms of Newscorp, not sure what sort of academic collaborations they've done in the past, but certainly in terms in your current capacity as Chief Innovation Officer, you've been engaging with Trinity College Dublin, the App Centre. What sort of led you on that journey to, again, I suppose, is around that sort of safe space to some degree. But what are your thoughts around that?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I deal with a lot of the hyperscalers quite often, the likes of Google's and Microsoft, right? I'm sure we've all been in those situations, whether it's an account executive or someone who's a business development. They're always selling, right? And there's never any problems. So to have a kind of a trusted partner that you can go to that has the ability to do that kind of deeper research, independent of various pressures that come in those larger companies, I think it is amazing, right? The other two things that I talk about as well is, if you look at the likes of DeepSeek, I don't know if people know about that, but that was born out of a lab, right? And for a while that was very much in competition with OpenAI. So I think when I look at academic institutions, AI is enabling them now to be on par with some of the more innovative things that are coming out of these hyperscalers. So I think that in of itself is fascinating, because we talk about AI empowering people, it's also empowering academia. So I think we need a way to bridge that. And then finally, we've talked about it a lot, is the multidisciplinary approach. Again, a fairly good example I think of is recently enough, Meta released their Meta Ray-Bans, right? And people are wearing them now. They're sunglasses where you can listen to music and take photographs. Those of a certain vintage will remember there was Google Glass. That kind of failed miserably, to be quite honest. But what's changed? Now people are jumping on these new glasses, and that's really down to society. So being able to understand social norms, cultural changes, have that multidisciplinary approach that's not just grounded on purely on the technology, but also to have access to experts, not only in Ireland, but also in European partnerships that I know Trinity's involved in, I think is fascinating, and would only be a multiplier effect to the research.
That's great. And actually, Nicola said, picking up on that point as well, in terms of the focus around the GenAI lab, what was the objective? What was the reason for bringing that into partnering with Adapt Centre?
I suppose we obviously recognise that we need to do. AI is not going anywhere. We need to embrace it. As a public sector body, obviously we have a lot of. We'll be open to audit. We'll be open to doing things ethically, responsibly. We don't always have, as I said, the skill set to know what's right, and what's wrong. And as you said, having that independent broker of academia to be able to help support us and to understand if a solution, how it works, if it's compatible with our regulations. We've had the opportunity to have wonderful partners for embedded resources within our team, looking at the legal side of things and looking at the technology side of things. We've had the opportunity to work with Rob on education as well. So all of those things bring an enormous amount of value to the organisation. And I suppose from our side, I hope that we're given back in the same way that we're given a test bed or a real world environment to actually apply that research.
Yeah, and actually I noticed when I was looking at your digital transformation strategy, which is, I think, supported by a corporate strategy, when I was looking through it earlier this week, actually one of the sort of headline sort of things is not leaving anybody behind. So it's really about inclusivity and just making sure that everybody benefits from the impact of technology and has an opportunity at least to be involved in the conversation, which is important. Is there any sort of good examples from? Because I know one of the things that we've been doing in the GenAI lab is actually sort of bringing ideas from employees to the fore, being able to sort of stage gate them and bring them into sort of proof of concepts. Is there one or two examples that that you could mention?
Well, we've had, I think, at this stage we probably have 45 ideas, but obviously all of those can't go ahead. We don't have the capacity for that. But again, the advantage of going through a methodology that allows us to work through the different ideas and see what's feasible, what's not feasible. But so far we've selected projects that look at councillor questions. I think we have council questions back to the 80s. And each time a councillor question comes in, somebody in the department has to respond to it. Now, people move on, people change. Sometimes the regulations change. So sometimes the answers might be different. So being able to use AI to look at all of those questions and answers and to be able to use that as a repository to get quick answers, to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of the responses that we're given. And it goes back to, I suppose, what you said about like one source of truth and, reliable information. And that's, I suppose, that's one of our key use cases. But we're also looking at learning and development. So how can we match in public sector we have grading scales and promotion goes through different scales, with each one has a certain competency attached to that. So how can we prepare our staff for the next stage? How can they get better? What courses are out there? What skills can they develop? to help them become, I suppose, more employable, not just in our own sector, but also in other sectors.
That makes sense. And actually, and apologies because I know we're running out of time a little bit. We've only about 10 or 15 minutes for a coffee break. Any less, and there'll be outrage. So, like, if I was to close this off session with maybe a comments from both of you, I suppose it's actually going back to the headline figure from that MIT report earlier this year in one way, which is a nice way to sort of close off. We're always talking about innovation. We're talking about culture change and how we have digital transformation in respect of organisations, and then you see a report like 5%, which panicked a lot of people in terms of, well, is this overhyped? Is it an investment bubble? What is it? And, in terms of your views, in terms of within Newscorp and Dublin City Council, in terms of innovation and in terms of what you're trying to do to bridge that gap, what's your sense in terms of that 5%, 95% not working?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
to be quite honest, I think that's what people should be doing. I know that might get me fired if I'm saying that everything should be a failure, but I think people should be embracing failure. I mean, especially I'm from a software development background, and we all know more than half of projects that get started, they don't get finished or don't achieve the actual goal they're set out. I think if you define projects with where the outcome is to learn, well, I think that's where you're going to make progress. I think you can't be afraid of making mistakes. I think you just have to understand that you're going to learn each way. I think another thing as well is the speed at which it enables software development. I'll just very quick story. A friend of mine was working with a partner in a different part of the business that they're co-developing and using the no-code solutions to create an app. And after they finished it, they're like, this is amazing. I just made my own app with AI. This is fantastic. And he said, oh yeah, you can look at the code behind it. So they opened up the window that showed the code, and the person looked at them in the face and went, did you used to write this out? And I was like, well, yeah. I was like, why did you do that? So I mean, the paradigm has changed in terms of software development, which is enabling people to do things faster. So if it is that 5%, if you can iterate faster, you're going to get greater success.
It's fine. Yeah. And Nicola?
Yeah, the same. I would say that we probably have more projects in the innovation graveyard than we do actually up and running. But the amount that you learn from your failures is what drives us to do better the next time.
Yeah.
So we're not afraid to fail, but I suppose in a safe space. So that's the benefit of having a Gen AI lab. It's a sandbox to trial and test things with the guardrails, using data that's not sensitive, testing it in a way that ensures that we know that if we move to the next stage, that it's safe and it's responsible use of AI.
I think that's a nice note to finish on. I'll just actually go back to the podium. 3:10. Okay, listen, I've bought you another 5 minutes, the things we do for you here, I tell you. So, yeah, listen, thank you to Eamonn Kennedy and to Nicola Graham. That was very insightful in terms of both their journeys.